Hi guys and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to try a lens that I probably should have tried out a long time ago. If you're a friend of the channel you'll know that I absolutely love the full frame 28mm focal length. So then the Fuji 18mm F1.4 should be a lens that's right up my street. There's two things really that have been holding me back. The first one is the price. This is a £900 lens. That's pretty expensive for a crop sensor prime. The second thing is, in images this lens appears to be pretty big, and I'm going to be sticking this lens on cameras like the X Pro 3 I've got here, and I was wondering how it would fit. So instead of buying the lens, I've actually hired it, and I hired it for 5 days, and Claire and I took a trip to Brighton, and we're going to be going through a whole bunch of images that I took during the trip. So kicking off with some specs then, so what is this lens? So this lens is an 18mm, which means it's a 27mm full frame equivalent, which is as close to the 28mm focal length as you're going to get. When it comes to the 28mm focal length, some people refer to it as the boring focal length, and that's a lot to do with the fact that a lot of phones and iPhones use the 28mm focal length, so people are very used to seeing 28mm images. So then this lens should have something about it that gives it a bit of a kick and separates it from the rest, whether that's some character or in this case the f1.4. The f1.4 should give you a pretty good background separation in your images and kind of hopefully get it away from some of the iPhone images that we're all used to seeing. The WR in the name stands for weather resistant, so this lens should put up with just about everything you could throw at it. And the LM in the name stands for linear motor, which should mean the autofocus is dead quiet and very fast. Weirdly, that linear motor in this lens, due to its construction, actually means there's like a set of elements that move back and forth together in a group. And that means when the lens isn't connected to a camera that's switched on, it actually rattles a little bit, which can be a little bit disconcerting, but it is how it should be. The Fuji 80mm prime does the same thing. So I think that's two Fuji lenses that now do this. It does feel a bit weird and it kind of freaked me out a little bit the first time I experienced it, but it's definitely how it should be. In terms of weight, this lens comes in at 370 grams, which is reasonably heavy, I guess, for a Fuji lens, but at the same time, when you connect it to a body like the X Pro 3, it doesn't feel unbalanced. It feels very kind of evenly balanced. It's not really front heavy. I do think on the X Pro 3 is pushing the boundaries of what I think is an acceptable size for a lens on a camera like this. However, on the X-T4 and the XH2S, it looks absolutely fine because it kind of looks a little bit like a zoom lens in terms of its actual size. Having connected it to my camera then, the next thing I noticed was the autofocus. The autofocus of this camera is dead quiet. It feels pretty weird that it works the way that it does in terms of rattling on the inside, but it's definitely high performing. I tried it out on the X Pro 3 and had no issues at all. I then tried it on the XH2S and it was just as quick. I do not think that I've tried an autofocus lens on a Fuji system that is this good before. It's honestly the best I've tried when it comes to Fuji cameras. So the next thing that I noticed then was the fact that the aperture ring wasn't moving, and that's because this camera does feature an aperture lock. That's a little button on the side of the aperture ring that lets you get in and out of the automatic aperture mode. I absolutely love this feature and it gets a big thumbs up for having it. However, the actual aperture ring itself is, I wouldn't call it loose, but it's very easy to turn. It never caused a problem in terms of me accidentally setting the wrong aperture or knocking it out, but it's definitely not as good as the aperture ring on even the 23mm f2 that I'm using here. The manual focus ring is also exactly the same. It's the freest moving manual focus ring I have ever experienced on any lens ever. The aperture ring doesn't really bother me too much. The manual focus thing doesn't bother me personally at all because I don't manual focus my Fujis, but if you do manual focus, that might be something that you're going to have to watch out for. The next thing then that I was super keen to try out was that f1.4. Was this lens going to have enough background separation and kind of character and sharpness to kind of get it over the line for me? Optically, this lens is actually incredible. So I shot an awful lot of images at f1.4 and the center sharpness, as you'd expect on a £900 lens, is exceptional. What I was not expecting quite so much was how sharp it is in the corners. I took a couple pictures of some walls just to kind of test it, and I was actually blown away. To the point that I actually then did some research and looked at other people's reviews, and a lot of people are reporting that this is one of the sharpest Fuji lenses they've used. So optically, this lens gets a big thumbs up when it comes to sharpness. In terms of background separation, I took a lot of portraits of Claire during the trip, and I think the background separation looks really good as well. I think the only thing that you're going to have to get used to if you're not used to shooting a 28mm is just how close you have to get to people. If you want to get a good kind of headshot of someone, you're going to be getting pretty close to them. And getting pretty close to them obviously helps with that background separation as well. So I think that the f1.4 does everything that you want it to do. It's sharp and gives you that background separation that you're going to need if you kind of want it to stand out from maybe some of the iPhone images that everybody is used to seeing. So by the end of the weekend then, what did I think of this lens? Now, f1.4, absolutely love it. It works great, the sharpness is great, background separation is great. The linear motor makes the autofocus the best autofocusing Fuji lens I have tried. The weather resistance also gives it a big thumbs up too. So optically then, and build quality wise, this lens is everything you could ever want. And if that's what you're after, that £900 price tag is kind of self-explained. However, for me, it's still slightly too expensive, and I was really going to be using that lens on cameras like the X Pro 3. And for me, I just don't think I'm going to get enough use out of a 28mm prime that's that big on a camera like this. It's really suited for more like the X-T4 and the X-H2S. I don't use those cameras for like travel photography, which is what I would want to use that lens for. So as much as I enjoyed it, and optically it's amazing, and I can highly recommend it to anybody that wants to buy it, just make sure it is what you want, because for me, that's the only reason I'm not buying it, because at the end of the day, it just doesn't quite work out for me. If it was half the size that it is, it wouldn't be f1.4, but it would definitely be all over it at that price point. So for me, I will not be picking it up, but I can definitely see what other people would, and it seems to be a very popular lens as well. I think stock's actually a little bit hard to get in some places. If you've enjoyed this video, then please do not forget to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions about anything you've seen in this video, hit me up down in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Cheers.